This is the March 24th interview with Ruth Hawley. She's almost 92 years old, and in this interview she's going to talk about her memories that she has of her brother, Russell Linch. So what can you tell me about Uncle Russell?
Well, he was my playmate, friend, and counselor, everything. He was protective of me, and I was a little sister, and we had our little spats, but we didn't have anything except compatibility. He saw to it that I went on to school when we hit Sydney and broke. I could have been easily put in the labor market as working in a grocery store or anything, because I was through high school. I lacked one semester, but Russell, he was adamant. You go on to City College, where I was walking distance.
That was in Pasadena.
Pasadena, and he at that time he was a soda jerk there in the All Drug Company, but he did have 2 years of college from this.
Well, let's go back. Let's go back to childhood first before we get to his college years.
Okay.
So he was 3.5 years older than you.
3.5. I got told about when he fell and broke his arm.
You've already talked about that.
Well, then he started school at Wymore, and he rode with the neighbor boy. Came by and picked him up, but we were ready to take off from there. It was shortly after there we left Wymore, and we moved to Lincoln. And we bought this nice home there in University Place, and it was walking distance where I walked to school and had my problems with a bad teacher. Russell was the star of all of the class. He was always a star pupil. He was, and he was mild and gentle natured. He was quite delicate. He was thin, and he.
Keep talking.
So he was an A student. I mean, A plus. There was just no two ways about it. But I guess I've gone through that episode about the difference of I was a different type of child. But I was his sister, and he always saw to it that I was included in everything. And of course, he was just a good brother, and he was happy there. Then we moved to Burwell. Then things fell apart. My dad had this. We rented this house which had a big barn, and my dad somehow or other got a hold of a horse, and Russell and I had this horse to ride. Well, Russell was in the, I believe, 8th grade school, and he was the new boy in the place, and the girls all were just gee-gaw. They were just giddy over him. Well, of course, that made the boys mad. And right now, he was in hot water because these ranch kids didn't like this city slicker coming in and stealing their attention of their little girlfriends. And he really made it hot for him. My mother went down to the school to talk to the principal. He'd do that with a kid that age in the 8th grade, but they were going to kill him. The one in particular that got him cornered, and it just happened that I was there, and I was going to run for help, and then here came his own father with his old big truck of some sort, and he honked the horn. Otherwise, Russell would have had his head beat off. They were just flat jealous of him. That he was a star student, had a horse, and all the girls were flogging around him, and he was flattered by it. He didn't give a toot about any of that stuff. It wasn't in his nature, but he was. I'll never forget the time that I thought I was going to see him get terrible beat up.
But he just got in the car then.
Yeah, his own father. The Lord was with him, because his father drove up and honked the horn, and the kid had the. It was a French kid. Well, we were only there the 1 year. Then we came into Lincoln, and he went to Lincoln.
Wellesley.
No, he went to high school there. he lacked 2 years of high school. No, let's see, how was that? Burwell. I was 9, and Russell was 12. So he was 3.5 years old. I was trying to think where, after we left Burwell, I guess that's what, I would be 9 years old and he'd be 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was ahead of himself in school. And I don't remember anything about anything else except Lincoln High,
Mm-hmm.
that he went to school there.
Uh-huh.
And he was honored on the graduation and everything. He had top honors.
He was always the smartest person in the school.
It was no effort at all for him. He just did. It was like his cousin Sterling, my mother's brother's boy. He was the same way. And he made friends with one young man in particular, was from a very nice family, and they palled together, and he knew he had to learn how to dance, because by that time he was noticing the girls. And we were there on this old house that he rented from a Masonic brother for $15 a month. We couldn't even pay that. Couldn't pay that rent. And he knew the situation. He was a good Mason, so my father had. We were there for 6 months at least. At the last where nothing was paid, and but the man, the first thing he did when he got the money was to pay that debt off. That was repaid his first thing. That was debt of honor, to pay that rent. So we had a happy time there. Russell, somebody taught him how to dance.
Uh-huh.
I mean, proper, to learn the steps. And
what kind of
maybe
dancing?
It was in the school.
Like swing or foxtrot, things like that?
It was a waltz and the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was a natural. And somewhere or other, before all this took off, before we even went to Burwell, he took tap dancing lessons.
Tap dancing?
Yeah, he could tap dance. And he was good. Because I remember him at a program there in Burwell. He won the prize at the school for local talent. He got up there and he tap danced had the music. Yeah, he was a good tap dancer. He was an old Fred Astaire himself.
I'm curious, when did Uncle Russell decide that he wanted to be in acting? Was that all his life, through the dancing
was basically,
and everything?
that was in his mind. It just, we all felt it. He was destined for, that's why we made the effort to see to it. He got to, it only took a few lessons. He was this colored man there, and Lincoln taught him. And he took lessons from a professional to learn that was when he was just before we even went to Burtwell, and he could tap dance. I mean, he was no effort at all to get up there and be. So, but it was in his blood to be theatrical, and he was always in school plays and any kind of speech contests and stuff like that. And he was well known for the time he left. He stayed. We went to Sydney, and he hadn't finished the 11th grade, so he lived with Ross and Margaret over there in their rental, and he had a cot put downstairs at the foot of their stairs where they came in off the street. That was, and I guess they gave him his meals, but he had no. That was where Uncle Ray, of course, he was good too. But there was no. But he stayed and finished the 11th grade. It was halfway through the school year. Well, then he comes out in the summer, and he just goes into the 12th grade there in Sydney. And I was in the 8th grade, Sydney, at the same time. So he drove through. We had a Model A Ford that my dad had picked up, and we managed to play the system with this lawyer friend of my dad's that got money from the government for seed, and got the crops in, and he even had a team of horses that we had, a very fine team. And so my dad, he was finally got to be a farmer, I guess. He was out there on the field, but part of the time he even had a hired man. In those days it'd be $5 a week, but they lived with you. And we had a couple of hired men at different times. It was that we did get one crop, the first crop, and I think we got 12 bushels the acre of wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after that, everything was just fell through. They had hail one time,
Yeah.
and then we had red rust another time.
Okay.
And then always just a plain old drought, and then we got like this storms you see in the
Yeah.
the
Okay.
movies.
Well, let's move way ahead. How did Uncle Russell meet Aunt Edla?
Well, he didn't meet her until we came to California, of course. And
But her family was from Nebraska
this
originally,
little girl
weren't they?
down the way from us.
Mom, Aunt Edla's family, they were originally from Nebraska,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that was a kind of a coincidence to
Yeah,
meet up in...
they were our type of people. The Fullers were very nice, high-class people. And they had Halsey was their oldest son. He was in West Point at the time, and how he got there was through the help of the government or something. But Clark was an astute businessman. He had off of the
This is Aunt Edla's
the
parents?
Dodgepole Creek went through his property, and he managed it.
Okay, who are you talking about now?
That's Rowena's father,
Who?
Fuller.
Wait, who are these people?
Well, anyway, Rowena was the one that rode back and forth to school with us.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Aunt Edla.
Well, I was leading up to it.
Okay. Okay.
So I was getting that in. Him and Rowena were as close as a brother and sister. And in the meantime, she takes up with this silly Art Zyke, who was family there, and he was a little undersized guy, but he was kind of glamorous. And anyway, Art was an older man, and he made a play for Rowena because she was the prettiest thing you ever.
Okay.
And
But move
so
quickly.
anyway, she goes off and elopes. So that let Russell, even though he really was at that time, but he didn't know it maybe, that he was very, very fond of Rowena. They were close friends because she rode with us, and they were in class together, and she would cry on his shoulder for any reason, and they were very close as friends. So that was as far as it went. Well, then we got evicted because of foreclosure, and we went then but so Rowena went her way with Art Zyke, and that ended up in a divorce within a year.
Okay.
And Russell went on to California, and his nose was to the grindstone because he was the food provider of our living there, and we got this apartment, and we settled there at 390 North Oakland. Russell worked at the Owl Drug Store for Mr. Bacala, and he was a good, kind man, and that's where things were sort of at a standstill, our life. Well, Rowena, of course, she got her divorce, and there was some correspondence, but it was, I don't know, out of sight, out of mind. They just grew apart, and Russell had his social life. He went with a girl by the name of Beulah that was I don't know whether she worked in a drugstore or somewhere or other, but she was from a nice, and he dated Beulah. I can't remember her last name. And that was who he was having a real, it was romance. Of course, he was 20, he was early 20s, 21 or 2, but he wasn't thinking about marriage or anything. He wasn't ready for it. Well, Beulah was marriageable age, and but they were it was a relationship like with Rowena, the way, so Beulah was really marriageable material. But she gave up on Russell because he was too much of a fly-by-night in his emotions. And she went on to her life, but we still stayed friends with her sister's family. And then Russell eventually, I know what happened. He got called into the military. In the meantime, he hooked in with the Pasadena Playhouse group, where he finally was doing what he had in his own mind. His career was going to be in the acting field. So he was active, and he played on main stage several times, and minor parts. And his life was with that Pasadena Playhouse. And at that time he was dating Beulah. Well, anyway, it's right about.
Okay. Well, we're gonna stop at this point because I have to go get the laundry.
Oh, okay.